Hey guys, welcome to this video in which I sew this adorable baby seal, and I also share a free sewing pattern for any of you guys who want to make him as well. I started with this really cute photo I found online, but you had to pay for the pattern and I didn't want to pay, so I just decided to make my own pattern. If you don't want to watch this part, that's fine. Just skip to 2 minutes and 32 seconds. So what I just did is that I sketched out the shape of the seal, cut it out twice, and now I'm taping the two parts together. This is so I can get a kind of three-dimensional form when I pull the parts out. And now I am sketching the part that I'll need to make the top of the pattern. So I just started with just this like pencil kind of figure. I cut it out. And then I first taped the point at the seal's head. And then I could carefully pull the paper down to see what shape I would need for the rest of the top. And I sketched along the lines to form a kind of end piece on the other side. Then I kind of did the same for the bottom, just like sketching out the overall shape that I'll need. And keeping the ends, I kept those very rough. The tail part I kept very rough here because I wasn't sure about the shape yet. So I started again by taping the triangle at the top. Then I started shaping a little. I decided it had to be a little thinner because otherwise it wouldn't fit well. And then I stuck that, and then I was able to just trace the tail really easily and cut it out. So that way I got this kind of paper seal thing. It's still looking really boxy, but that's because it's paper and not fabric. Then all that was left to do was cut out two little pieces for the flippers. And then I could start by just taking my paper seal apart again. And then I had all my pattern pieces. But these pattern pieces were still really rough, so I traced them onto a paper, made it really neat. I measured everything to make sure all the pieces were symmetrical, and I just sketched it out really nicely. And yeah, here is the pattern. Pause here if you want to see how to get it. I explained everything there. So, now you've got a pattern, but you actually still want to put the seal together, right? So, first thing, of course, cut out the pattern pieces and trace them onto your fabric. I just used some old fabric from a sweater that I cropped. So trace out all of your pieces and don't forget to draw a line around each piece for the seam allowance. I just did a really broad seam allowance because I like having enough fabric. Then I cut out all of the pieces. An important thing to note here, because I didn't really show it, but on the bottom piece you have to cut between the two tail parts. I'm going to show it with a red line, but you need to cut right here as well. So next I started on creating the seal's head. I sketched out where I wanted the eyes and the whiskers things to be. And then for the eyes I actually used some polymer clay to make two little round balls. Then I used some iron wire. I cut two small pieces for each of the eyes and I just stuck them in there carefully. Then I added some glue to make sure they would stick extra well, and I set those aside to dry for a while on a hair clip, which worked really well. Meanwhile, while those were drying, I made the little whisker dots. So I just pulled my thread through, then I made a little simple knot and pulled it really tight to the fabric, like I'm doing right here. And I did this for each of the knots. And after I'd made the knot, you can just put in your needle just beside the knot, and then you can go to the next knot via the inside of the fabric. When I was done, I just made a knot on the inside, cut off the excess, and I had my little whiskers done. Now it was time to actually start sewing. Here I'm pinning the top piece to one of the side pieces. So you're just going to pin on the inside, and what I did, what I really like, is pinning it from one side and then pinning it again from the other side, just to make sure I've pinned the lines extra well, because they're not straight lines, so it can be pretty hard to pin them sometimes. Here I'm marking clearly from where to where I want to sew them. And then I just went in with my sewing machine and sewed everything together. I used red thread because that was the only thread I had enough of. Preferably I'd advise using like something white or grey, but it worked. And once I had done one part, I sewed the other side part to the top. I've done that here. As you can see, I haven't followed the lines exactly, but that isn't really needed. Then I opened it up and I decided to attach the eyes first, now that it's kind of easy to reach the parts. So what I did is that I took the iron thread, got as close to the eye as possible and bended it 90 degrees. Then I was just able to make a little hole and push it into the fabric. Really carefully, like this. From the inside I then clipped off the excess thread, iron thread, and then I bended the thread around back to the fabric so that the eye couldn't fall off. And I didn't film this, but I also added some glue to the outside of the eyes just to make sure. All that was left to do now was sew the flippers, just following the lines around the top, leaving the bottom open so I could flip them inside out like I'm doing here. I'm about to attach the first bottom piece, so this one. It's really starting to come together now, but I've decided I'm going to start by doing the tail part first. More explanation about how I'm going to sew this, because this is one of the trickier parts. So this is the seal, this is the side, this is the top and the other side, and this is going to be the bottom. But as you see here, these tail parts, they are going to be flat. So even though it's a part of the side, you're going to flatten it against the part on the bottom. So the side is kind of going to twist here, because here it's like this, but then here it flattens out. Now I'll be able to sew nicely across here and until here, and then we'll have sewn the tail. Alright, this is looking pretty good. As you can see, the tail has flattened out now, and the only thing left to do is close this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from here and sew till about here, so I leave a big enough gap so I can fill it. Well, it's all closed, there's only a little gap, and now it's time to turn this inside out. So as you can see, I haven't been able to follow the lines everywhere perfectly, but I've done pretty well, I think. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how it turns out. I'm going to have to be really careful with the eyes because they're kind of fragile. So hopefully... This is just going to take some prodding, so I'm just going to get in here with this pen and try to push the tail out. Yes, there we go. Okay, I'll do it to the other one as well. So before closing it up, I'm going to use some black wool to just sew a little nose right here. And as you can see, I'm using the opening I left in the seal to also pull the thread through. Now on to the stuffing, and I didn't have any actual stuffing, so I think I'm going to use this fluffy wool, because if I'm honest, I don't see myself using this for anything else. So what I did is that I just used my fabric scissor to cut the wool in little pieces, and then I started fitting the seal with those, and this really worked pretty well. It made a really nice soft filling, so if you have any wool like this left over, you could use that as filling, maybe. It worked really well for me at least. All that was left to do now was close the gap. I just used some hand sewing to close it up and attach the little flippers, which I just hand sew as well. And this is the result. I think he turned out so cute, and I decided to name him Bobby. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, and bye!